oh, look, we're live. We should probably run the credits.
This is 2OF Entertainment.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Doing well. Good day, sunny out.
Yeah, welcome to the first ever live Canadian Art Today broadcast.
Yeah, it's kind of, I didn't quite get my stuff together to get everybody posted, but we'll just see what comes here organically off our postings and see what people think. Yeah, well, we have another a really different artist today. I mean, not different in person, but type of work that's being done. Paige Mortensen, she's a watercolor batik artist. So, yet on paper, not so much on linen and cloths and stuff like that or silks. But she uses wax resists in her watercolor style of doing. A lot of times there's architectural types of imagery that she works with, and now she's moved into a whole other mathematical abstractions that she's working with. But I think we should, really sit back and look at how people transition from one type. You don't have to do the same kind of work all the time. How can you be an abstract artist in a geometric way, but then also be quite a literal artist in a realistic style of painting? But I think with the wax batik has a really unique look to it. Like you have to work with when you work with wax resists, you can't go back and put watercolor back in once the wax is down. Right. You build up layers, and then she's going to show us in the very opening slides some of the stuff of how to do it. So cool. It's really cool, and I think if artists are thinking about it, there's another way of doing something with their watercolors. They said a little bit of wax and a little bit of hot wax, and how to work on it. And so people can refer back to the program later on about the processes. So it's kind of cool. Maybe we'll bring Paige in here and we can talk to her.
I was gonna say, I always just keep talking about her and
I can give her a little bit of background because people understand.
Paige, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Great, thanks for inviting me.
No worries. I'm gonna leave because I'm gonna let the two professionals speak because nobody wants to hear about my stick figures. And I will see you at the end of the show and ask my questions. So have a great interview.
There you go.
Thank you.
Oh, good day to you. We're gonna have a great conversation. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while. I mean, I've known about batik watercolors a little bit more through another artist that did it, but she actually worked more in a very watery based acrylics is what she'd water her acrylics down, very much like a watercolor and work on things. But can you give us a little bit of, I guess, your background, where you started? Were you always a watercolor artist, or did you start with pencil crayons? How early in your life did it become a passion, I guess, is come that we're doing that?
Actually, in my early life, I was not into art. I was a math science person. So I did that, and I did accounting and I did computer work and all of that. But later I started taking more folk art classes, and, this was 30 years ago or so. And they were great. I learned lots of technique, but eventually I decided I just felt like I was following a pattern. And I'd always done things where I followed a pattern, like I crocheted and I, every craft that there was, I did. So I decided I needed to move beyond just following instructions. And I enrolled in the University of Saskatchewan's certificate in art and design at the time. And my eyes opened and I experimented with all sorts of things. But in the one class, the suggestion was a batik. And I think the instructor was thinking crayons, wax resist crayons, like an Easter egg kind of thing. But I found a tutorial online for watercolor batik. And I did this one and I was just hooked with the process. So
Yeah.
That was 2012, I believe. And
Wow.
I've been doing that ever since.
Yeah, and I think you've mastered it incredibly well. I mean,
Thank
you
you.
talk about, do you think some of those early stages helped you get to where you are today? Like, even crocheting, like thinking about the patterns and how you put things together to build a color block of some way. In it, because that's very mechanical as well. Crocheting, you have to have a pattern that you follow, and you anyway. You're more like into
I think I really enjoy process.
yeah.
Process, and Batik has a very definite process of steps you need to follow.
Mhm.
And you but it kind of makes you let the materials do their thing. You can follow the process, but you
Mm,
also have to be open to what the materials are going to do.
yeah,
So, and now I'm moving back toward more geometric stuff that brings me back to the finding patterns and following patterns.
right. And probably that science background that you initiated in the very beginning. I'm going to get Stephen to start our images up here, and we'll just start with the first one, and we can talk about that a bit. There we go. So I made it as big as I can for what we're doing, and
Yeah, it's
maybe people can look at. This is the process. So can you walk us through, like, there's 6 images here. Just quickly kind of walk through. You've written instructions below, and people can refer to that if they got full screen. Be a little tougher on the phone, but we just talk about that first stage of the penciling out. And go ahead, you've got some stuff there to show us.
okay. Well, first I'll just show you. This is the paper that I'm working on. I don't know if I put it close, you can see the textures in it.
Yeah,
It's called ginwashi paper,
right.
and it's
Okay,
quite thin, but it's really strong. So it can get wet, and you don't want to pick it up when it's wet, but
right. There's still
it's
fiber. There's fiber in it, and you can actually see. Is it kind of a rice-based paper, Japanese paper?
it's a Japanese paper. It's hemp, I think, is the main ingredient.
Oh, okay.
So I start just by drawing with a waterproof pen, a basic shape what I'm aiming to do,
Right.
and then on that very first image, you probably can't see it on a phone, but in the top left-hand corner, there's a little bit of white. That's where the wax is on there. So some of that paper will stay white. And then I put the lightest color of watercolor that I'm using, and I
Right.
let that dry. Then I add more wax. So in the second image, you can see there's on the right-hand side there's a paler yellow and a darker orangey yellow. So I've added more wax to
So do
keep
you?
it the light yellow and the
Yeah.
darker color.
So do you? So you kind of work light to dark. Is
You
that
can only go light to dark. If
light
you
to
get
dark?
too dark, you're done.
Right.
You gotta start over
Right. So if you want white showing through, you wax those areas to begin with.
at the very beginning. And
Right.
just to tell people, I melt the wax on like a pancake griddle,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's just paraffin wax that I buy at the grocery store. And so I just melt it on a griddle, and I use brushes or sponges or cardboard or print blocks or all sorts of things to move the wax from one
I'll
to the
mention.
other.
Yeah, I'll mention one other thing that it works very well is if you've got a hot air popper, like popcorn popper, a hot
Hmm.
air one, you can get a little. You can have a little can that goes inside that, and you put your paraffin in and turn the hot popcorn on and off, and it'll heat up the wax beautifully. You can dip in and out of it. It's one of the things my dad had made for my mother, who did porcelain work, and it was just
Cool.
this little hot. Yeah, it was kind of cool. Short of being a hot plate of wax, I know that too. But sometimes you have to work in a smaller area, and that little popcorn popper just does a great job. Yeah.
I
Anyway.
also have a little melter that's designed for hot glue,
Oh yeah.
but it's a little cup, and I put a tuna can in it to melt the wax
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
occasion. So,
Kind of cool. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, we're down to the middle left panel. I guess we're on
and
that.
on that one, you can see I've added the the veins. You can see the veins in the leaf are lighter, and then another darker orange. And I just keep building. So the next layer I've added more wax and a darker color.
Right. Yeah.
And then the bottom left, there may have been a couple stages that I didn't put in this image, but after the bottom left, then I make sure it's entirely coated with wax. Because if the paper has wax in places and not others, it ends up looking translucent in some places, not so much in others.
Okay. Yeah.
So then once it's completely covered with wax, I put it between newspaper, newsprint, and iron it. And iron and iron and iron. And the wax comes off.
Okay, so the newsprint is clean newsprint, no printing on it newsprint? Or is it actually newspaper newsprint?
I have used both. On the first iron, I tend to use clear, like unused newsprint paper, but after that, I have used newsprint, like newspaper.
And suggesting to people, kind of those days are kind of gone to find that newsprint that used to be end of the roll at the
I'm nearing the end of my roll end. So.
But other places to find that sheets of it is maybe some of the moving companies.
Yeah, Shipper Supply and places like that have.
So you can buy it in nice unwrinkled stuff. They can and already pre-cut. But
I save the paper that comes in boxes for things we order. Use that too.
Yeah, aren't we like that? The artists are like that. I think we're collectors and of things that we use, and you have to figure, oh, I can use that for this, and then you end up storing a lot of things. So at the end, so you put your darks in last, like your outlines or what you want to pop, and then you wax the whole sheet and then iron it all out at the end.
Right. And then the bottom right has been ironed.
Okay.
And it's much clearer, you can see.
Yeah. So does that bring some of the color out a little bit too when the finishings, does it seem brighter or does it?
Well, the wax dulls it.
It actually dulls it. Okay. So this.
Yeah.
So now this sheet of paper, how would you present that finished piece of work? Is it a matte and frame like normal with glass? And
when I started, I used a matte and frame quite often, but then I switched to mounting them onto regular artist canvases. I just use acrylic medium and mount them, like essentially gluing them on. And then I spray them with a UV varnish.
Nice.
Because it's watercolor, it needs to be protected from the sun.
Yeah, the ultraviolet, yeah. So they will actually stick to a wood panel if you wanted to, or canvas is what you're saying. There'd be no problem.
Well, yeah, you use a medium to.
Yeah, I'm just curious because the wax didn't go all the way through the paper.
Well, you've ironed it off.
Oh, okay.
You've ironed most of the wax off.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, that's cool. I think people can understand that a little bit. I think we'll just. So here's one of your images. So it's not a leaf.
It's not.
So can you tell us your love, I guess, of architecture? I mean, you seem to we're going to go through a number of architectural images here, and the background of, I guess, that love of, I guess, tangible things. Where's the love there? You're not doing trees and landscapes and those kind of things, but you love the love of architecture. Where's that in your work?
Yeah. Well, I actually do trees and landscapes and flowers as well, but architecture, I guess when I was starting Batik, we had been to Europe a couple times, and the doors are just fascinating. So not just the architecture. I think the architecture and the old stone look really works well with the paper. But I also am curious about who lives here, or who lived here 500 years ago, and who built it, and how did they do that without our modern technology? I like this one because the door's open. What's inside? Who lives here? Those questions.
Yeah. I think good works have stories behind them. I think that the questioning becomes important. For become personal. Like you want to go, what is in behind that door, for instance? And it's nice to see the arch and maybe and how it was built. Yes, structurally, but I think you need to go once beyond that. And I think this kind of the open door idea and the story, and it has a feeling of age. There is a question. I think it's a lot of times it's the technique that you're using. So, like with the wax, it has a defined hard edge that's ragged. Like this is what I guess it gives it a look. I guess to the paint, and I think so can you use other mediums? So could you use like an oil or an acrylic wash, I guess, in a similar style, or is it pretty much a kind of a water-based thing that works best?
I think it needs to be a water-based thing.
Yeah. No, it's lovely. Oh yeah, here's the flowers for you, Jeff.
Well, then we'll jump to flowers. I feel like I have to alternate a bit between something soft like a flower and the crisp hard edges of a building or a bridge.
But
So
a flower is a complicated structure, not
yes.
unlike architecture. It to feeling, and this one has got the light kind of just bouncing nicely between the petals and the different things. So your eye is moving nicely around. It's got a nice rich background on it that makes them pop off the page. So again, you start with the light areas and wax those in, and then you just keep slowly building your layers up on the flowers and waxing and waxing and waning. I don't know how. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they have a really nice life to them. Where does the experimentation come in this? The chance, I won't call it a mistake. There's a happenstance that happens with all mediums. What is it with the wax thing you got to be kind of careful of a little bit?
Well, it's wax is melted when you're putting it on, so it tends to drip, or it tends to spread further than you thought it was going to go. If you have some on your brush and you brush it on, it may just stay where you put it, but it might spread out. Depends a bit on the temperature of the wax, how far it will go. And it's on paper, as I showed you. So watercolor, it's like painting on tissue paper. Like watercolor is just going to go where it's going to go. So there's challenges with that.
You're dealing with it on a flat surface, correct? It's not like on
Yes, I
do
it on a flat. I put the wax on actually on a drafting table that's on a bit of an angle.
Okay, yeah.
Because I can see my image more prospectively.
When you back up, yeah, when you can see things a little bit.
But the watercolor, I put wax paper or something underneath my ginwashi paper, because watercolors often are what's called sediments, and so like ultramarine blue, the blue granules will drop right through the through the ginwashi paper sometimes.
Oh, okay.
So you have interesting designs come out on the wax paper as well. But
okay, so it actually goes right through the paper because it's so thin. Yeah,
because it's so thin.
Right. Yeah. But it's still strong. It doesn't ripple. The paper doesn't roll and ripple or anything like.
No, it just goes right through.
Yeah, I guess part of it is it's got a really nice rag content in that paper, so that's probably why it's doing that. So how big would this painting be about?
I think that one's 12 by 36 inches.
Wow. So it's a beautiful long piece. Yeah. Yeah. Those make really nice presentation pieces when they're like that. It's got such a different look. You cannot get this kind of look in just watercolor. It just won't.
No.
Ragged edge has a very defined look to it. I mean, you just can't get it. I mean, it's sort of like a dry brush edge in a planned way. Like it's just so cool, and the look is just it's there, right? It's the really look of this style of work, and they're beautiful piece, beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, here's some of that architecture we talked about. Now we know you and I we do know this bridge a little bit, but generally it's just that beautiful arch thing. What kind of stories in this one? Where do you up and down the riverbank looking for images, or do you just the walk.
I love to walk along the riverbank, and fall is my favorite time of year, I think. And just the colors and the blues and the oranges, they play off each other in the water,
Yeah.
um, and
Yeah.
the precision of the bridge combined with the softness of the water and the tree that's in the foreground there is, I just really enjoy that
Yeah.
counterbalance of the hard and the soft.
Well, the
And
maps. Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah,
Go ahead. Yeah.
we're in a city of bridges, so I I enjoy looking at them from different angles and different lights and different times of year. So
I like the look of the leaves of the tree on the left here, and how it stipples and it lets the solids of the bridge come through between them. So I think this technique you have allows that you don't have to paint around every little branch. That's the nice thing about this process is you can eventually you mask out the area where the leaves are, and then you paint the bridge in the background, and it just fills everything in that's not painted with wax, and it gives a really nice, I guess, a trapping of the images between the one in the background and the one in the foreground. So be very interesting to see how many people kind of give this a try, this type of technique. It's not I don't know too many artists locally that paint in this technique that you work in. It seems maybe tedious to them at a certain, because you work on it in layers, and you gotta, it doesn't sit and finish in one sitting unless it's
no,
just, you're
never.
it, never in one sitting. Yeah. Where watercolor, you can sit down and you can, a good long morning, you can probably paint a fairly decent sized painting in just a watercolor if you've got it all penciled where you're going to go. So again, the structures you pencil look very similar to what your leaf structure was done that you in the very beginning that you showed us. You
Mhm.
light pencil out what you want, and then you decide where your lights are. Is that the process? And yeah, so basically there's a light to dark, just like water,
Mhm.
that, and then ironing out. So is the iron on all the time next to you? Is it when you're working? And
No, because you have to wait till the end. So I tell everybody it takes me a week to do anything because I have to let it dry between steps.
right.
So, I've done the white of the top of the bridge there and waxed it and then built up layers. But when I get to the darks, I just use a big brush and splash the color on because the wax is going to stop it from going anywhere that it's not supposed
Exactly.
to go.
So do you work on multiple pieces at a time because you're waiting between things, or is it a one at a time thing?
Um, it depends.
Yeah,
Like this one, I think is 24 by 36 inches.
that's a big
I
size. Yeah.
probably did it just on its own, you know. Um, if I have some smaller ones and they're sort of similar color-wise and subject-wise, I might do 3 or 4 at a time.
So do people see that you have a couple of shows that you show annually in, or how do they get a hold of your kind of work that you're doing besides online? Of course, you.
Online. Our artist workshop group in Saskatoon here has a show every spring um, that we only show new work at. So
Oh, cool.
generally, I've got 20 or so new pieces for that show. I
Yeah,
also have work at the Saskatoon Craft Council or Saskatchewan Craft Council
yeah, in Saskatoon. Yeah,
in Saskatoon. Yeah.
cool. Well, that's where people are looking at. Oh, I love this bridge. Here you go. I've been over this bridge many times. I have a great story once we talk about your bridge a little bit more. This bridge is very special to myself in a couple of different ways, but this one goes across the North Saskatchewan River, coming back from North Battleford to Saskatoon. Uh, so it's kind of a. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with this bridge? How personal is this bridge?
Mostly I just drive by it on occasion, but it's just such an interesting bridge with its 3 arches, and you see similar bridges across Saskatchewan. Most of them, or many of them, are just 1 span
Right.
or
Yeah.
and smaller, but this one's just really architecturally, it's just really interesting,
Yeah.
and it's not used anymore, obviously, but when I have painted it or done it and shown it It's just amazing to me how many people like you have stories about this bridge, and whether they, somebody took wedding pictures on this bridge and they call them
They still do, I think.
groomsmen climb up the up the side of it. All sorts
you
of
can. This is I guess called the Borden Bridge, outside of the community of Borden, but it was built in the 30s during the Depression, and I remember coming back. Our lake is, I have to go across this bridge to get to our lake in the day. Now there's a brand new bridge running off to the one side. We're off to the one side of it, but in the beginning, my wife and daughters and I came back from the lake on a Sunday, and there's a big hill at the other end of that bridge up at the top, and we're coming down to it, and all the cars slowed up and it's almost stopped, and we creeped down the hill, and what had happened is we'd had rain showers throughout the day, and there literally was a rainbow that went over top of that bridge and landed on the water on the other side of on the river on the other side of the thing. I could not believe what we were doing. And I told our daughters, I said, this will never happen in your lifetime ever again. We're going to drive under the rainbow. And that's what we did. All the cars crept at about 20 kilometers an hour down across this bridge. And when you go under a rainbow, it just flips just like that. It's amazing. And the kids were wondering where the gold was. I said, it's at the other end of the rainbow. The pot of gold. But it was such an experience. And it was just like, and I'll always remember that with that ridge. And I wish I had a camera in the day to do a photo of it. But today you would never believe it. You'd think it was AI. But
that's cool.
Day, it's a very cool story. And I think my story of the other one, my aunt, in the day when they were building this bridge, she had to go to University U of S and go across this bridge while it was being made, and it was quite an undertaking to get across this bridge in the day. She was it was under construction, and she was trying to make her way back to university. But everybody had, like you said, has that story about this bridge, and now it's just still there. They don't advise driving on it, but people do sit and walk, and actually a lot of artists do watercolors and paintings from plein air from the bridge. It's quite a undertaking. But I love the feeling of it. It's just this, like you said, this architecture, the look of it, beautiful piece. You have a love of arches, by the way. I know that. I can see that.
Yes, I do. That's curves. Yeah.
Yeah. This feels like an old Little English garden. I don't know. It's got that.
It's actually a Saskatchewan garden.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it's a fence, right? It's a fenced-in yard. Cool. Yeah.
My grandchildren live near a small town, and they take swimming lessons in people's backyards. So on this side of the fence, there's a little swimming pool, and I had the privilege of spending time watching grandchildren and their swimming lessons in the pool. And then on the other side of the fence, the owner has a actual garden, but the fence just fascinated me. And
I love the archway, and it leads up to the gate, and it just has it's a very personable way of looking at. I mean, it's the window, the bird houses, and the things on there, the adornments. It feels like it's one with the environment. The piece. It's not just this fence, like in a urban area where it's a separator. Where this is more. This is like an invitation to a cottage, or it feels very. I think maybe it's part of that lattice work that you can work. Yeah, but I can see where the wax resist comes in beautifully for doing lattice work. I mean, you can paint the crossing in there. No, I like the story too. I just otherwise I didn't realize what was on the other side of the fence.
Yeah. Well, her compost pail is even sitting down there by the door.
Oh yeah, I see that sitting down
there. It's such a personal her space.
It is, yeah, and very, very nicely personalized. And you did an incredible job of it has I don't know, there's old English feeling that it's just the nature of that roughness texture of the boards you can get with the technique that you use, and no, it assembles very well. And here's Saskatchewan is fairly well known for. There's still a fair amount of older buildings in the rural areas, and a lot of the farmers just leave it because it's relative, maybe a relatives or a family member's original building, homestead, and they slowly just deteriorate on the landscape. But they can you tell us where this is or what this is about? This one?
This
No.
is Saskatchewan. I think it's over in the Kyle sort of direction.
It was a drive-by shooting, was it?
Yeah, I mean, I stopped for various places, but again, it's fall, the fall colors. It's the question of who built these and who lived here and what was like in century or more ago.
If you're ever in the Kyle area, this is about the tallest thing you're going to see in Kyle is these buildings. You can see the landscape's pretty flat in that area, and but it's a real nice depiction of rural Saskatchewan. I think it has a really nice flavor, even though it's kind of a historical piece in the sense. Yeah, I think but when you see these structures that are integrated into the landscape, they're not they belong there for some reason. They, even though they were man-made items that were built for a function in the day, they're still functioning in a way, and visually, I guess I would look at it that way. But no, it's just I like seeing, because I see a lot of times they'll do a watercolor of this, and it will be an impression of those buildings. But this technique with the batik technique, I don't know, it's not it's letting, I guess, the medium really help you. It kind of helps you depicting the grasses and the foliage, because it's not all, it's kind of rough and tumbled look to it, and it has a. So do you splatter some of this at times, or how else is it all just applied with a brush mostly?
A sponge, actually. If anybody ever had a bee mop, they have the big holes in the sponges, and I cut a little piece off, and I've actually been using the same piece of sponge for 13 years probably, but it leaves holes in the wax, and where the wax goes on. I also use brushes. I also have carved printmaking blocks and use, just some lines in a printmaking block. That helps make the grasses.
Yeah.
Brushes.
Understanding you got to make your own tools. A lot of times stuff doesn't exist. But to understand, I forgot about brushes or I guess the sponges. It's kind of it's a no-brainer when right, that'll work. I kind of look at it and say, I forgot all, because brushes, after you finish with them, are like a stick, because the wax kind of heats up and then melts, and they're stiff, and then you got to thaw them back out or warm them back up again, and away they go. But
you can use the same brush, but you can't use it for anything else.
No, it would be, well, maybe you could use it for doing some encaustic work on something.
That's true.
Yeah, a dart, maybe you could use it because it kind of firms up on the end. But yeah, this one's really. We talked about this a little earlier here about this. This is really rural Saskatchewan, and it's a lot of these elevators are probably non-existent now these days. But I love the railway, and you and I both talked about this railway track that curves into this community between the elevators. Not a lot of tracks curve in Saskatchewan. Everything's pretty straight. But to get into the community, you got to get off the main line a little bit, and hook up to things. But Can you talk to this a little bit about your feelings on this one and how this track feels for you? Like the importance, I guess, of it?
Well, this is actually the small town where my husband grew up. And this picture was taken long, long ago because the elevators aren't there anymore.
Right.
The piece is actually called Going, Going, Gone because they've left. But the way the track curves around just leads your eye into the piece.
Yeah.
And like you were saying about the old farm buildings, the grasses are growing around the things and the trees growing there, and it's just sort of part of the landscape. It just feels like it belongs there.
Feels like it's reclaiming, nature's reclaiming what we've done a little bit when you see the grasses now growing right up against the rails. And these rails right now are probably not used as much as maybe they're even gone in some of the small communities. They're gone. They pulled them out. I don't know. What community was this from?
This is from Gull Lake, so it's right along the number 1 highway, and
it still
lots
has
of trains still go by there, but
yeah, they don't stop as often anymore, I don't think.
no.
Well, they don't. Yeah, it's just the whole the demographics changed of how we move grain. But as an artist, we kind of walk around and maybe we see things a little differently of, the technologies that have taken over and, trying to, is it important you to record a little bit of this? Is that anything in your,
Well, I did this whole series. The last image and this one were both from called Prairie Perspectives, and I just exploring that, our colonizing ancestors came here, and this is what is left over from those early days, and what does that mean to us and the rest of the province. And
in the short term, 100 years, in the long term, this stuff just all nature reclaims it. At some point in 100, 200, 300 years, it will be reclaimed. All those buildings are rotting. They will be gone. Railway may become something else. We hopefully will still be here, but nature will always be here in some sense. Whether it's what we love or not, it'll still be here. But I like the feeling that it's not coldly straight up and down. There's things like an elevator. It was in the day built straight up perpendicular to the landscape. Yeah, telephone poles and all those other hydro poles are the same, but now they start leaning and they wear in nicely. I guess I'll call it nicely into the piece. And this has a really nice feeling to it.
Thanks.
And there's an icon.
This is the Saskatoon icon, our Bessborough.
The Bessborough Hotel, which was part of was it the CP line or the CN line that came across Canada? Now you log at my history. Was the CP hotels. They are the CP hotel chain. McDonald in Edmonton, and I think there's Quebec, and they all have the classic look to what a hotel looked like in the day. I think even our King George Hotel at one time was similar to that in Saskatoon. Had a look to it in the day. Yeah.
This is kind of the backside of it because this is the side facing the river. So I'm looking at it from a bridge,
right,
or across the river, one or the other. Yeah. But it shows the park and the nature that is along the riverbank, and that gives the view if you are in the Bessborough Hotel.
Right. I think it is an iconic. In the day, that was our riverbank. We've now got a number of other shiny, glossy buildings that are taller and over to the left side of this on our riverbank now. But in the day, this was about the tallest building we had, almost. Definitely on the riverbank, and it was a classic piece. It's still there, and I feels the Bessborough was always the thing where it almost felt very, I guess, European in a way. I think the gardens and the parks that led up to the way it was designed, and the landscaping. And the trees just sit so nicely. It's just rounded, and then this thing called the building pops out of the trees. It just has a center of the bouquet almost. It kind of. But anyway, in the day, it was. I think many artists have painted this, and yeah. Do we still have the? Is it the? What is it? Peregrine falcons? Are they still living in the top of this thing? Or is it the peregrines? I think we had a couple. We have a couple of hawks that like pigeons, and so they let them stay in the building. They let them stay in the Besborough up top somewhere. They have a nest up there, so they try to keep our pigeon count down. I guess maybe that's what we look at. There we go. So
here's a switch.
Well, yeah, but like we said, we had an earlier flower piece. This is a lot of wax put up front on this one. You can see the lights, the whites, and retained. But yeah, so like you said, here's a switch. You said that's important to you to kind of bounce back and forth.
It is. There's just a different energy in nature, and this was just random flowers, really, that I.
So do you
flow to it?
Yeah. Do you photograph and then just work from pieces of flowers from it, or?
That's what I did for this. Was multiple different. Generally, my pieces are done from basically one photograph that I've taken, but this one was a
compilation
montage of various flowers that seem to want to go together.
So are you kind of a thumbnail person, kind of an idea first and then work up the bigger piece, or do you work just directly from your image onto your big one and just let it do what it does, or what's the process?
Usually I'm just working the size I'm working.
Just directly.
I prefer to work larger. There's just more space for Batik to do its work if it's
right.
got
I'm just saying, a lot of times you say, I want a big flower up on the right and I want a little flower on the left, and roughly how my stems will look. And then from there, do you go from there to your large piece, or do you just say, no, it looks good, I want my one flower? You just got that. Some people can work intuitively. They just go in and do it. Other people need to have a plan before they go to it. Otherwise, they feel they may ruin their piece of work. I don't know.
I did this digitally first, sort of.
There you go. Yeah.
Like, cutting picture flowers out of, not to this detail, but I did create a pattern or a layout, sort of.
With people understanding how to build something like this, like you said, it's a large piece. With me, I tend to do a little thumbnails and say I'd want a big one here, big one here, big here. Go back. I'm not much of a digital cutting person, but it's good to hear that you do it that way. To plan things out, and it makes sense though. You clip a flower quickly and you can move it around, and then say that maybe you plan your colors that way. I don't know too, but it has a really nice soft palette to it, yet it's got a bit of sting. I kind of like that. It's and it's nice free flowing. It's not. We're back to our bridges. This feels very Monet French to me. I don't know. I love it. Yeah.
Back to fall bridges, falling leaves, and the yellows and fall colors.
Right.
There's another cool little bridge in Saskatoon that many people drive over but don't actually know it's a bridge. Don't know what's underneath it. You have to walk or bike or something to get down to see what's there.
This is in behind or around the area of the old Mendel Art Gallery, correct? Yeah, on the riverbank.
Just north of
connects Kinsman Park with that area in there. And I think you're right. Bicycle riders and walkers have seen this more from this view. But I love that. It's connecting two parts of the landscape together without a road. It's just it's like that little footbridge that's there, but it's really not. It's an actual. You actually drive over this one, but it's really nice. kind of, and I've been looking at it more now than previously. The trees in the background behind the bridge, like that connect to the top of the bridge, and I noticed there's this kind of halo around those trees, and is that just from a wider piece of wax put in, and then
Yeah,
paint the dark
it's
over, and no, it has a I
they
don't know,
do.
beautiful feel. It has a really nice feel. Um, I just looked at that texture, saying, "Oh, that's kind of neat." It's got this. How do you get that halo look around something without it trapping tight? Because it has, if the color trapped tight to the black tree, it gives you a different feeling than that lighter color trapping to the tree first, and then the other colors trapping to it. It has a nice feeling. Even down to this tree in the foreground where it's got this stippled bit of white in that area, rather gives you a texture to that rather than just being this black pole sitting in the
Yeah,
middle. Yeah, no, it's got a no. There's nice depth to it. I love the texture. Just a lot of really nice things happening here. Is that sponge again? That kind of does
yeah.
a lot. The
Good
magic,
old sponge
good old
magic.
sponge. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, knowing when to use the sponge and not is kind of it's a it's a learned thing. You've been doing it for a number of years, so you know what could maybe you can expect from something, when it comes along. There you go. This one's very nicely structured. I just, I mean, when I again previously looking at this building of the tree and the bark, you know, it looks so nice with those. Do you get that certain feeling when you lay the wash in that it kind of goes, oh yeah, that works? Have you had the moment that when you're saying this is working?
the moment usually doesn't come until I iron it
Okay.
because I can't really see. So the first ironing of the wax off is always exciting. I
The big
always enjoy that moment.
the big reveal,
The big reveal, yeah.
But it's not too often that an artist gets a big reveal. I mean,
It,
I
I
don't know.
do.
It, well, I know, but I'm just saying a lot of times you're in the moment when, say, you're just painting, you're in the moment painting, and you know that something's happening well, and maybe the reveal doesn't happen till the next morning when you come back to the studio and you look at the work and you go, "Oh, I caught that. I did that. I did. Oh, I got more than I thought I got in the work." It doesn't happen every day, and it's like, how do you do that more and more? How do you build that aha moment more often than not in your work? If you see it, then other people see it as well. And it's probably more important that you see it, because then you've nailed it. But it's kind of, I just sense the light on the bottom left of the tree trunk that's sticking up. It, that light is probably is more important than anything else that's in the piece of work. It just snaps your eye to say, that gives me a sense of the light of the day, and it just like, that's why I said, oh, that must have been that would have been my aha moment a little bit if I would have said, yeah, that's the right value for the bark on the right hand side of the tree, and it feels, you know. So this is an uprooted tree, probably, I guess, initiated
Yeah,
with grasses that are working
driftwood.
around. Yeah, it's a complicated piece to do. Those kinds of things. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's I like though that the watercolor can fill in a mass area, yet you can leave reveals in, like when you wash in where the dirt goes in the root and where it comes from, and being able to pick out what you want and leave the rest. Yeah, it's not, some things are more important than others, and I think making those decisions on the fly is really an important thing. Where is this at? This just one of the lakes, and
This is actually not Saskatchewan. This is Lake Ontario.
is
Um,
it? Okay.
we were down at Niagara on the lake and found a little path down in the trees, which felt really secluded and felt very much home. Like y- you could, if you looked, you could see Toronto across the lake. I mean, it's a long ways away, but
Yeah.
but
Just
it could be anywhere. It could be Victoria. It could be
Yeah, it could be.
Saskatchewan. It could be just about anywhere.
So is universality important to you when you're building work? That works could be anywhere. It doesn't have to be specific. You try to look for that in your work?
I don't. I'm more focused on what interests me, like
Hmm.
what grabs my attention. Like I just felt so calm sitting at this spot, and
Yeah,
it was just so comfortable.
yeah.
I liked being
Well,
there.
and it feels that way. It feels, I guess I feel grounded there. I guess I get a bit of that feeling that you were there. It's a little bit um like you're in the foreground looking at this, but I feel like my back is against the trees or something when I'm looking at this. I do get that feeling, which is kind of a cool way of coming into an image. You feel like you feel homey, that it belongs. I've seen it be maybe before, or maybe you've actually defined it better for me. Maybe that's what I'm looking at. It's kind of an understanding. At our where my cottage is, we have a number of trees that I've painted over the years, but it's just how do you really understand that, I guess, tree, not necessarily, but the location, where you're standing and doing things. Here we go. Brr, cold now. Got that. I just
Back to Saskatchewan.
this again. This was always a classic view, um, of the riverbank and frozen up a little bit, and I love the shadow of the bridge on the ice. It sets it off. It's a risk that an artist may take that a lot of others would not take. They would just paint. They'd just paint the city scene and the water and a bit of the snow. But when you see that beautiful arch again that comes in there, and it just the stipple of light that goes through it adds something more. I guess part of this is a repetition of the river itself, that arch, because there's a curve in that, and there's a you got a number of those things working. Maybe that's what it is that I'm looking at in design wise. Anyway,
It was the shadow that
got you. Yeah,
grabbed me.
yeah,
It's really cold out and you're out for a walk, and just the way the sun was making the shadows, or the bridge, I guess, was making the shadow.
right.
It just grabbed me, and
Yeah. No, it's you talk about how do you was this a photograph that you took
I
initially?
took a photo that day. Yeah. Well, I took a
You,
lot of photos that day.
so you do any plein air drawing or painting at all, much, or
Not much.
not much sketching? You're more take the picture, go home, and define what you saw. Yeah, I think a lot of artists take photos, especially with their phones now. They're quite
Mhm.
probably take more photos than ever, because the old days was slide with film. You wait for processing, and then it was like there's this lull of anticipation, and then you realize that half the shots didn't turn out, and different things can happen. I turned to using my sketchbook a little bit more later on, but 30 below, 25 below is it's a tough thing, standing outside sketching something and getting what you want. It's a little tough to do.
Yeah, it's
So
cold enough taking a picture. You
yeah,
better get your gloves back on, or mitts
at
back
25 and 30 below, you pretty much keep your camera warm. Otherwise, you hear click, and
on. Yeah.
oh my, something didn't go through. I've seen that before, where the camera freezes up. Actually, the old days. So I'm looking at the sky. I see a lot of there's little. Is there like little scratchy marks in the sky of some kind? In the
That's the fibers in the paper,
That's the fibers in the paper. Yes, forgot
and they
about that.
pick up the color differently.
Yeah, that's right. They do. So that's cool. So can people do this technique on regular watercolor paper?
It's hard to get the wax to saturate regular watercolor paper.
Okay.
If you are just wanting to experiment with it, my recommendation would be trying it on a coffee filter. They actually work really well.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a small surface, but it's a good place to experiment.
Yeah, some can be triangle and some can be round. It's relative to the
Round
coffee.
ones might work better.
Well, yeah, but they could also do collage with these as well, right? You could do a little piece on each one and then glue them together in different ways, which could create different types of looks of work. Yeah. Well, I never thought about the coffee filter. Yeah. And inexpensive, really, really looking at them, because it is all rag content in that as well. I don't know. Is it an acid free? I can't remember if it's acid free or is it
I
just
don't
bleached.
know.
It might be just bleached, but I guess once you get her waxed up, you ain't going anywhere.
Probably doesn't matter. Yeah. And for experimenting, they're fun.
So here's the other part where you're going. When I saw Paige doing this, I went, oh my, this is a little change from Bridges and Flowers, but I think,
Dramatic change.
yeah. So where's this come from? Where this
Yeah,
is beautiful stuff. I just love it.
I think this comes from my mathematical brain that wants to make sense of patterns and
Right.
explore that. This is a sample of like all the little circles were batiks that I did separately and cut out and glued
Okay.
on.
Yeah.
It's sacred geometry, exploring ancient wisdom, I guess, using just a compass and a straight edge, although in this case the straight edge was just the thread.
Okay.
If you draw 6 circles around one, you create a flower of life, which you can kind of see between the 2 circles at the top left. There's a circle with 6 petals in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So then you draw the flower of seed of life, and you draw more circles, and you get the flower of life, and then you get all of these shapes. Where in ancient wisdom, there's I think 19 circles that I've added circles on top.
Okay.
And that forms what is called the Metatron's cube, which sounds really complicated, but then so my threads then connect the center of every circle to every other circle.
Yeah.
And I think the patterns are really interesting. They also define what is known as the Platonic solids, which comes from Plato, but they were known before. And I'm going to show you one. So this is a solid. This one is the icosahedron. So it's got 20 faces, and in this case, they're all triangles.
Right.
And so there's only 5 possibilities for Platonic solids. The most basic one is probably the triangle, 4 triangles. And each of these back then represented an element. So this was fire. And this one was water. So it's just kind of interesting to me anyway. Geometry, sacred geometry, thinking about earth, air, wind, and fire.
Yeah. No,
all being represented in this one piece.
Yeah.
And yet it's shiny.
The batik areas were the circles.
Yes.
That you did, and then cut them out and put them in. So have you done any kind of shinkolei types of work at all, where you're putting pieces of one cut of work into another one, which is similar to this, but it's kind of in shinkolei, and you press them into place, but onto one piece of paper. But so the background, which is
it's a
watercolor. Was that initially just a looser watercolor in the background?
Yeah, just a loose watercolor on watercolor paper, and then all the circles drawn on.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
In pencil.
So the threads are sewn right through onto the back?
The threads go right through the watercolor paper.
Yeah. There's another one. Here's some of those open cubes that you were kind of showing us there a bit.
Yeah, again, it's just drawing circles, but then you can find cubes in the circles, which is kind of cool.
Fold the edges up to give you this open look. Yeah.
The triangle shapes at the bottom were circles that were cut, and then the sides folded up. So there's the 6 points in a circle, or there's the cubes in the circles. And
So are the cubes are they thread work?
They're thread work.
They're thread. Yeah. Okay.
And the triangles are sewn on also.
Right. Okay. Very nice 3-dimensional piece on a 2-dimensional design. What size is this about?
10 by 10, I think.
Okay, so they're smaller areas.
They're smaller, yeah.
Yeah.
They make neat, interesting shadows. And that's
I
kind
think,
of fun.
and I think it changes for maybe whoever's room it's in as to how the shadows and the light during the day. I've always liked that where we've got a horse sculpture in our house, and the light moves around, and that it's on the wall, and it like certain times at 10 o'clock in the morning has a certain look, and in the afternoon has a different look. And the shadow is probably more interesting than the horse, but it's kind of, I just said, oh, that's kind of neat. I like that. And that's actually got up, take photos of it sometimes, but
Cool.
it's different in December than it is in June. It's just the way the light is, moving around the time of day.
Absolutely.
So now you've got some of these behind you as well.
I think maybe all of them. Well, on the same pattern on this side with purples. So it's the same, all of these are the same pattern drawn with circles, but then squares are found. They're just different ways, different colors, different ways of highlighting squares. And I'm finding it fascinating, finding patterns in simple things.
Yeah. Well, geometry, that's the magic of geometry, and if you've got a compass, you can have a lot of fun. I think is what was that? What was that called? There used to be it was a circle and a circle, but and you could draw all the little things. What was it? Spirographs, yeah. There used to be spirograph. I remember as a kid, and you could make these crazy drawings with this spirograph, depending on the sizes of the wheels that you had. You keep going round and round, and the plan stages are pretty crazy. I love them. They're just like great patterns. Are you much of a quilter or anything as well, or do you do other patterns from things? Or?
I've always said I'm not going to start quilting because I think if I did, I would really like it and want to start another whole collection of supplies and things in areas of the house. So maybe someday, but not yet.
It's good that you've got discipline. I don't know. I'm not like the guy up above us. He's got no discipline at all.
I have no discipline. I'm the killjoy. I'm back. So there you go. That was very cool. Enjoyed the art very much. So here's my question that we always ask everybody: what's your price range if someone wants to buy it? From where to where?
Oh, from about $120 to $1,200.
Are you asking? Are you asking or telling me? I don't know.
That's about what it is. Yeah.
Okay.
It depends.
Cool.
Like a 10 by 10 is going to be 200, and a 24 by 36 is going to be 1,000.
Gotcha. Very cool. Well, it's absolutely beautiful and very neat, and I enjoyed it tremendously. So thank you for sharing it with us today.
Thank you,
and
Stephen.
for everybody who's interested in buying her art, you can go on below, and there you go. That will be the link to her website, and you can spend as much money as you like, and she ships globally. I'm just saying that whether you do, you don't, you do now. That's the important thing. So,
well, the other thing is she's part of Art in the Garden show that's coming up this August, and
very nice.
Her information will be on her website as to where and when that is in Saskatoon. And there's usually 5 ladies, I think, and is that one this year in the Art in the Garden?
There's 5 of us, yeah.
5 of you there, and it's great to see her work in a garden situation, and I'm sure they'll give you a glass of punch or Kool-Aid or something, and you come in the door.
Unless you're doing it near where the pool is, with the art with the pool door, and then you could just push them in the pool. They don't need the punch. I'm just trying to help out. So,
no pool this year.
No pool this year. Okay.
Yeah, one of the ladies had a pool in the previous years, but
it was very, very cool to see stuff.
It's a beautiful garden, by the way. When you do walk through this one, and hopefully I'll be around here at the 3rd week of August, I think, something like that. Anyway, catch it on Paige's thing, and I'm sure there'll be social media postings like crazy. So appreciate that.
It was a pleasure having you, and for all the fans that came to the first live Canadian art show, if you will, welcome. And we'll rebroadcast it so you can send it out to everybody else. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see everybody next Thursday. Have a great day, everybody. Cheers. Don't forget to
Thank
subscribe and
you.
like.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.